So I've never showed anyone this, but at the same time, I'm not the only one who's done it. I've seen people do it, and sometimes there's a really good reason to do it. So let me explain. We're going to use frequency separation to do an arbitrary sharpening of your image. Now you might think, okay, why? I have maybe I can use the high pass sharpening method, right? Which works super well. A lot of people do that. I can just simply use the filters for sharpen. Maybe sometimes that works for me. Maybe you like unsharp mask. Maybe you have a third-party sharpening thing. Maybe you do sharpening in RAW. I mean, gosh, sharpening is, there's so many options. And at the same time, or at the end of the day, it's not like, oh my God, we must sharpen or life is lost. No. However, sometimes we want to sharpen. And I think that showing you how to sharpen with frequency separation, which is super easy, it's also a good exercise in understanding frequency separation, sort of. Let me explain. Okay, first of all, I'm using FC3 because it's convenient and fast, and I can show you different things with it. But you can also do this with a frequency separation action that you might already have. So I'm going to go ahead and run it at a 1 radius with the idea that effectively I'm doing a 1 radius sharpening. You can probably liken it mostly to high pass sharpening, mostly, but it's a slightly different process. They're a related process in terms of the calculations and stuff and the algorithms, but it is going to be similar. So obviously 1 pixel radius shouldn't be that much of sharpening. Now I'm going to right click median just to show my options. Currently, I'm going to leave apply median twice, and I'm going to turn off subject mask and high clip layer and all the other options. Not going to turn them on because I just need the high layer. Let's go ahead and run it. It should be pretty fast, even though I'm recording a video, it should be pretty quick. And then it's real simple what to do once you run it at the radius that you want. All right. And boom. Now I have the high layer. That's my sharpening layer. So I'm going to pull it down outside of the folder. And then I take the FC3 folder and I delete it. There you go. That is my 1 pixel radius sharpening, off and on. You might think to yourself, okay, not terribly impressed. It looks like high pass sharpening. It's very subtle. Okay, well, here's the thing. High pass sharpening, or rather almost all sharpening effects, sort of, I'm not going to go into it right now, but almost all sharpening effects, the calculation starts with a blurring effect, a blurring algorithm, right? And then there's some kind of reverse again, it's an explanation thing, which, by the way, reminds me, if people want more sort of color science calculation type of videos, we can get into that. But for the most part, most people don't ask. Anyway, now what we're doing instead of what high pass can do, we're now using the frequency separation method, right? Which in this case, we can use median, right? Which if you are familiar with the different blurring operators that people mostly use for frequency separation, then you know median is often the cleanest, quote unquote, when it comes to perimeters, high frequency or high contrast perimeters, right? So let's say we use a 10 to sharpen, which is a bit high, right? Let's go ahead and run it. Here again, what we're going to do, we're going to keep our high layer, and we're going to discard the rest, and that's going to be our sharpening effect, which then we can do things with it, which we'll talk about in a minute. So let's take the high layer, bring it back down, and we're going to delete the folder. Now that is a sharpening effect at 10. You might think to yourself, okay, it might be a little too strong. And I agree, it is strong. But for portraits anyway, it could work great for a landscape. It could work great for a product, okay? But you have minimal to no haloing because it's median based, if that makes sense. And we're extracting the actual texture of the image because of frequency separation. And then we're applying it. Now, all sharpening is relative. You may like more, you may like less, and there are upper limits. For example, let's just do a 30. All right. We should get a decent sort of demonstration about how that perimeter won't be as bad as it could be. But 30 is still going to be, in my opinion, objectively unusable. Let's bring it down and we'll delete our folder. And there it is. As you can see, it mostly just creates an interesting sort of tonal contrast, which looks like a cheesy filter from 20 years ago. So we don't want that. But if we find a radius that works for us, sometimes frequency separation gets us the best sort of sharpening effect when we're struggling with other sharpening effects. It minimizes the noise, absolutely minimizes the halo effect. So definitely consider that. Now, if I do choose something relatively strong like a 5, let's go ahead and run that. Don't forget the ending result, the ending layer that you get, you can do anything with. You can mask out things, for example. Let's just move it down here. There we go. Delete that. we can come to our final, in this case, our final layer, hit subject selection, for example. That's one thing we can do. And then once it's run, we go to our high layer and we mask just the subject. And now she is the only thing sharpened, and we're using frequency separation to sharpen. And again, to me, this is more of a demonstration of what's possible, knowing that what we're doing is we're extracting the high texture, the high frequency from the image itself, right, to create the separation. And then if we get rid of the low frequencies, we are enhancing the high frequencies. It's a good idea to experiment with it, whether you have an action for frequency separation or FC3. Experiment with stealing that high layer for sharpening. You might be excited by the results. Every now and then I try it and I get the exact sharpening I was looking for when I'm struggling with other methods.